Hello and welcome to another episode of Lates Online from the Natural History Museum, the monthly show where we have a bit of fun exploring the natural world through everything from quiz shows to art classes, fashion workshops to time traveling mockumentaries, and much more. Now, tonight, we're going to be kicking back and playing some video games. Specifically, we're going to be playing Alba, a wildlife adventure from Us Two Games. If you haven't played it or even heard of it, you're in for a treat. It's a gorgeous game that Christina and I got a sneaky peek at during development, and since its release, it's been racking up glowing reviews from players and critics alike. Over the next hour, we're going to explore Alba's world and chat with two of the people behind the game, Kirsty Keach and David Fernandez Huerta. The conversation's open to you at home as well, so if you've got any questions or comments, do pop them in the chat and we'll come to as many as we can. So, without further ado, let's welcome David and Kirsty.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really hyped to play this game and to chat about it. But before we get into the meat of it, why don't we give some of our audience who might not be aware of Alba, what sort of game is it? What are we talking about?
Sure. So Alba is a small open world adventure game in which you take pictures of animals and you try to save the wildlife of an island, which is in danger for many different reasons. One of them being the mayor is going to try to build a hotel in the site of a nature reserve, and you're going to stop it.
Yeah, it's a lovely story, and both very personal and also very relevant to wider issues. And we're gonna be playing a little bit of the game as well. So, Kirsty, why don't you bring us up to speed on the story up to the point where we're going to be joining Alba?
Okay, so we've just played the first 5 minutes behind the scenes, and in that time, you're Alba. You've just arrived on this little island to visit your grandparents. On your first day exploring, you discovered an injured dolphin stranded on the beach, and so she did what you're meant to do with gone to get some adults' help, and you've spoken to different people in the village, and they are coming. They've helped rescue this dolphin, and so all drama in Albaville.
And I think we're meeting her just when her and her best friend Inez have decided that looking after the environment and saving animals is going to be their thing, and they're going to start their own little kind of troop, their own little group of wildlife defenders. Now, Christina's here in the background, so she's going to be playing along while we chat. But just a notice for some of the audience at home, because of the streaming platform we're using, the frame rate might seem a little low, but we hope that we can show you the vibe of the game. And if you really want to see how beautiful it is, I guess you'll have to play Alba yourself. So while we start looking at the beginning of the game, David, why don't you fill us in on why make this game? Where did the idea come from?
I wondered this myself sometimes. So I like taking pictures of animals, especially birds. Now I'm into bugs. Just like I take my camera with me every time, and when we go on business trips or whatever, everyone's telling me, "Oh, David, when are you going to make a bird photography game?" And this has been going on for years. And at some point, it's like, oh, maybe, I don't know. So we were prototyping right after making Morning Valley 2. And we had spent a long time making different prototypes. And I was like, I just want something simple. Which turned out to be the most complex game we've ever made. And I started working with Kirsty, who just had finished work on Lansen. And was like, okay, let's have some fun. We know, we knew what games were going to be made in the company. It was like, oh, let's just have some fun. So we started talking about things that we liked, different game ideas. And we talked about this idea of a photography game, and we started talking about the landscapes and nature that we used to enjoy when we were younger. And I grew up in Spain, and Kirsty grew up in Spain as well. So we found quickly that there was a world that we had in common. That oh, it's cool. Let's just try it. So we built this prototype in which you just run around a little island and you can take pictures of birds that run away and fly away from you. And people in the studio started seeing that, oh, this is. I think this is cool. And no one, we didn't. I didn't think at first that it was going to be set in Spain and all that, but it just happened like that, and then people really connected with that. It's like, okay, well, we're making a game about Spain and where my grandparents are in. As you can see on screen, that's my maternal grandparents. So yeah, and that's the house that they used to have when I was a kid. There's lots of personal stuff in there. Not not to make myself like important. It's more like to show something that feels real and feels like observed and it's a piece of real life that you can kind of like jump into.
And playing it does feel like that. The relationships between the characters and stuff do feel very, very human, very real. And I'm sure your family and friends are kind of chuffed that what started off as them bugging you to make a game about one of your passions has resulted in this. So, I mean, did you have an audience in mind when you made this game?
Well, for me, and I know for you, Kirsty, but for me, it was like when I was a kid, I would have loved to play a game like this. And I was the kind of kid that would like, ask for nature documentaries for his birthday. So, like, I think like kids in general, like just enjoy animals and nature and all that. So I don't know, like the tone came quite natural. So then we started to think like, okay, who is this game really for? And the answer we landed on is for the 10-year-old in all of us, which I think like we all will have one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you sent us the early copy, months and months ago to have a bit of a playthrough, I found that it was kind of feeding that nature loving child inside of me who never really went away. I mean, look at what my job is, but also in some very kind of turbulent times, it's a really kind of calming oasis of a game.
It was such a pleasure to work on that. Like during lockdown, especially, we were all stuck in our houses, and it was like, especially like in the winter on the run up to its release, it's just like, getting that little bit of sunlight in your eyes just is such a pleasure. And we were just like, we're so lucky to be working in this lovely environment, especially as like all the foliage is coming in and all the colors are being adjusted. Yeah, it was really special. And like even the sound, we don't hear it right here, unfortunately, but it's like, it was really uncanny just like hearing this environment come together, and you're like, oh, that's a Spanish blue tit call. That's crazy detailed.
Yeah, and also, we've just seen Alba picking up rubbish, and then a little heart appears over the bin. So there's that kind of constant little feed of positive reinforcement for these positive actions.
I think this is like one of those, like, this is why Kirsty and I teaming up work so well, because I'm kind of like, I think around here, it's like, oh, it's going to be about running around an island, and Kirsty thinks around like, and you're going to put trash in the bin. And like that connection of the two like extremes of that experience, I think like that's what like really made the early days work nicely. And yeah, the bin, who everyone loves, is like Kirsty just like I started playing the game one day, there was a bin, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. There's like those like sprinkles of magic.
Yeah, those little details, like, oh, go ahead, Kirsty, sorry.
No, I was thinking like there used to be a mechanic where you had like a photo album and there was like physical photos, and there was a bin that like popped out and like the photo would crumple, and it's like it had physics, and like so one day they were like, what's happened to the frame rate? And it's just like 200 scrumpled up little bits of paper like rolling rolling across the island.
Because of course Alba is carrying a bin with her all the time.
Yeah, one of the things that unfortunately the frame rate on this stream isn't really conveying is one of the most beautiful details of this game, I think, is it's inconsequential in terms of the gameplay, but as part of the running animation, occasionally Alba will just break into a little skip for a few steps, and those little details, I think, really add that warmth. And one thing I really wanted to ask you guys about, and maybe Kirsty, you can tell us more about this, is how did you kind of end up marrying the vibe that you were both wanted from it and the gameplay and the mechanical side of stuff, because they do work so well together and they really reinforce each other.
Yeah, I think that comes from like what David was saying of being like inspired by real people and places. And so like we've got this really nice foundation of like our experiences of what it's like to explore nature. And I'm sure like you can experience that no matter where you're from. And it's about like being distracted around every corner. There's something new, and like the design teams did a really, and design and art teams did a really nice job of like making sure that if you were following this path, like suddenly you've got a little glimpse you see of like the tower in the marshes or the sign to the right, and you're like, oh, there's some mystery. So even though you're on these quests, there's always like some little distraction around the corner, whether it's a bird that's doing a really cute animation, you just want to like sit there and take its photo, or there's a bird call somewhere else and you go and explore that. Yeah, and then just like the really charming animations that the animation team did, is just like so much charm sprinkled in there. And then
there's
you
definitely
go
a
to,
kind
like,
of breath.
yeah.
Sorry, I was going to
Oh,
say,
yeah.
there's definitely kind of Breath of the Wild vibe in that kind of like, oh, I can explore over there, or I can explore over there.
Yeah, it's really funny watching everyone like play it in a different way as well. Like people leave the gate on the first day, and it's like either you just stumble straight into the story, or else it's like, no, I'm gonna go and fill up my bird guide. Like I've got this book to fill out, and I'm gonna go and run off to the marshes and find the flamingo. And it's really interesting to see everyone's different take on how they want to explore the environment.
Yeah, and some people are going to be kind of fully completionist. And on the subject of story, I think we are about to see a bit of story unfolding in the game. So what's happening here?
So this is the mayor, Tony, who has like teamed up with a local businessman, and they're about to unveil their plans for the nature reserve. And everyone is hoping they're going to, renovate it, but they plan to build a massive luxury hotel. And obviously, Alba is not going to like this.
And so this kicks off a big part of the story of the game, which is the kind of uncovering the the motives and the corruption behind this development and things like that. So, what was there a specific motivation for including this part of the story?
So, well, this is kind of like has to do with what you were asking before about like how the gameplay and the tone and the story all works together. Like every action that you take in the game is a positive action. You can't do anything wrong in the game or anything bad. And kind of like it's decisions like that. So in the case of the story, we were making a game about appreciating nature. And from the beginning, it was like taking pictures of animals, but also taking pictures of animals in a human environment. It's not like you go in the jungle and you're taking pictures of like exotic things. It's kind of like the nature at your doorstep. And fairly early on, we realized that like ecology had to play a big part on that, but we didn't go fully in until maybe a year into development of the 2.5 years, when we said like, this game wants to be a game about protecting the environment and what can we do as people to protect the environment and get together. So that was the these elements of the story, like the mayor, the hotel, and all that, like they were like brushstrokes of that from the beginning, but at some point like it solidified and we kind of realized like, yeah, we're making a game about protecting the environment and we should be just lean into that. And it was kind of like a liberating moment, like of realization, like, yeah, this is what the game wants to be. And really happy to be work with a team that were like all on board with that, and the company that is on board with that, and we're not afraid of saying what we want to say.
And I think that kind of that journey that the game went on from being about appreciating nature to being about protecting nature, it's I think it's similar to a journey that a lot of us go on. The route to protecting nature through your actions and your words and stuff like that comes from it starts off with that kind of fascination. And there was something that came up in an earlier conversation that we had. I think, Kirsty, you brought it up. And you were talking about the idea of, treasure is a classic game mechanic. But the treasure here, you're not destroying it or removing it by gaining it. You are kind of sharing it. Am I butchering your words?
It's kind of like that classic saying, isn't it? Like, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photos. And like, one of the things that's really lovely we hear from players is when they've finished playing it and they go out to the park and it's like, oh wow, I saw this like shoveler in the park in London. I wasn't expecting to see that on my doorstep. And like, suddenly you're noticing so much more is around you just through being introduced to these species through the game. And I think like that leads to a level of attachment to nature. And we could have made a game that's like, fantastic beasts and like fire dragons or whatever, but there's something magical in the nature that we have in the world, and having an appreciation for that and realizing that actually the world we're in is really kind of magical in itself. And there's millions of seagulls, but they're all really interesting.
Yeah, because let's be honest, there is another set of games about a child in a red and white hat who goes around collecting animals. Obviously, the Pokemon franchise, but the vibe is entirely different because it's not that extractive capturing and fighting. It's that appreciation and protection.
It's something that we started, like, I joined the company when we for Monument Valley, and part of the identity of that game is that it's a mobile game in which you're used to, mobile games are used to kind of like collecting coins and collecting loot and stuff like that, and that in Monument Valley you return something at the end of every level, something that you're trying to right or wrong, and that's kind of like stayed in the DNA of the studio as like trying to make games with a positive message and a positive attitude. So yeah, I think this is like the evolution of that sentiment and bringing something, like you see players, they're just like happy playing it, and that's like the most amazing feeling.
Yeah, and that kind of journey is something. It's quite similar to the journey that the Natural History Museum we try to take our audiences on. Our whole mission is to create advocates for the planet, people who are going to stand up for nature with their actions and in conversations and with how they kind of influence their politicians and stuff. And that all starts with, just firing up that wonder at nature and
Exactly.
then taking people on a journey rather than trying to immediately impose something on someone or trying to immediately make them jump from very little connection to nature to suddenly being a strong advocate for it.
Yeah, which is something that in the game we tried to make, like we were talking about the bin before, but the game doesn't tell you pick up the litter around the bin. The game just tells you there's rubbish, you can pick it up, but doesn't tell you to do it. And the same way that the characters are not all opposed to the hotel, they all have different opinions, and you as a player need to figure out like, what do I think, rather than hammering you with a message. And it's more like through the actions figuring out what you feel about these things.
Yeah, and that translates much better to how people are going to be able to interact with these issues in the real world, because the real world isn't one of evil overlord and heroic protagonist. It's so much more complicated than that. And on the subject of the real world, you've said that you took inspiration from where both of you grew up in Spain. But how much of the characters and locations are rooted in the real world? So what about Alba herself?
Well, Alba is a bit. There's reasons why she is the way she is. I wanted a child because there is a way of discovering that only a child can do, because you're seeing things for the first time and you don't have context for many things, so you can have a pure opinion. And I wanted her to feel like a bit of a fish out of water So the fact that she lives abroad and comes back in, and like that kind of like background for her, I think was very clear from the beginning. But
Yeah,
like her
for a game of
personality,
discovery, that's a
exactly.
great place to start.
But like I'm an immigrant and I have children here, and seeing them like grow and develop a sense of identity and like which of their countries is their country. Is it both? Is it one over the other? And I found that like a really like beautiful setting for a child protagonist, someone that doesn't have everything figured out, and is just like trying to build her identity. So that's the reason why she has that personality, and she is a child and all that. I mean, for me personally, it's kind of based on my son, but I think everyone in the team will have someone who reminds them of Alba.
And what about
oh, sorry, I was just thinking about like
ahead.
her lack of talking in the game as well. Like she's not. I think it's like an unspoken thing of like maybe people are speaking in Spanish and she doesn't speak Spanish as fluently, and it's like she can just nod and shake her head and she's understanding what's going on, but like she's maybe not as fluent as some of the other characters that we're meeting. And so I think but they don't mind. Like she's part of the community and they're helping out just the same. And there's an international, acceptance that people are always doing their best.
And some people have asked like, oh, is she non-verbal? It's like, well, it wasn't necessarily the idea, but like if that works for you, then it's great. Like having that a bit vague, I think that like just makes it richer and helps people connect with the game.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I think having that kind of blank slate, not having that kind of putting words into the player's mouth means that it's much easier for any kind of player to just superimpose themselves into the identity of Alba.
But she's got a bit of identity. Like she makes faces. There was a time in development where we did some user testing, and some of the things that came back were like that Alba didn't have much of a personality, and we were like, I think we doubled down on certain things, and no one's said that for the final game. Oh, this is another character that is based on a real person. So Simon the vet is based on Simone, the animator. So he did the character animations for the main characters. And during development, he found an injured swift in the roof of his house, and he put it in a box and called it the nature protection people, and then drove like 30 kilometers or something to find an animal sanctuary where they will like heal the swift and all that. Like, yeah, this is going to be honored in some way in the game.
Yeah, that's the real life stuff.
so yeah, we made him into the veterinarian.
So before we move on, we've had a couple of comments and questions. We've had a lovely comment from Katie on YouTube saying that she played it with her little daughter who's 7, and her daughter loved it so much, and that you've really made it kind of easy for her to get to know the controller and the controls. So thank you for making such a cute and charming game, she says, which is lovely feedback.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess that does talk to the fact that the controls are very simple. It's not Dark Souls. You're not having to get your head around a lot of different combinations. It's just quite a simple interaction with you in the world, which I guess helps immersion.
Maybe because I feel like I'm answering to all the questions. I like us to take this one.
Yeah. So I guess like we started off designing it for mobile, and so it was a portrait game to begin with that you could, and the idea was that you could play it with one thumb on your commute to work. And then we realized that we could also use controllers. So I think we wanted to capture that simplicity and accessibility of engaging with this open world. And for many people, it might be the first open world game that they've ever experienced. And so we wanted to keep it, accessible, and it does, like you say, improve that sense of immersion. Things like the tools, we've kind of leaned into the sort of more realistic style of mapping of controls. Like you've got a camera and you use it in a way that you'd expect to use a camera, and on the mobile version you use the gyroscope of the phone, so you can just fully like rotate around in the world, the sound updates, the visual updates, and you can really feel immersed. And there's a simplicity to that as well that just like helps with that onboarding. And
I do remember sitting on the sofa with a tablet, kind of realizing that maybe the bird I wanted was behind me.
You're upside down, inside out.
That was like hilarious moments in the studio when we started working on it, and people feel a bit uncomfortable. They're kind of like moving away from you. It's like, no, I'm not taking a picture of you. It's just a seagull, right?
Yeah, maybe it's not a game to play on the tube or something.
Yeah, we had conversations about that, and that's the reason why you can actually move the camera with your thumb as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we just we lost all of our muscle strength. That was it.
We've had another question asking, are the animals that Alba is taking pictures of and looking for, are they related to any collections in the Natural History Museum or any NHM research on wildlife? Which I can answer, I think. No. But, have you guys thought about kind of maybe how the kind of video games and animals in video games relate to or are a continuation of that idea of kind of display collections and things like that?
Yeah, this was like one of the ideas behind the game is the human urge to collect stuff. And you can see in museums, you can have like lots of specimens of all kinds of animals on display. And I love nature guides, and I like have behind me one of those rows is just like books on like bird field guides of birds, and the idea of collecting through knowledge. So I think in that sense, like it relates to what like museums do, which is like showing the public what in this case nature has to offer. And it was very important from the beginning that these were real animals from a real place, not just fantasy land and fantasy animals. It's not like medieval Central Europe and dragons that you can see anywhere, but like that were Kirsty was saying before, like go to the park and say like, oh, you know what, like I recognize that sound, and like that's like an amazing moment for people. Then now you can not just see a bird and know what it is, but also hear a bird and know what kind of bird it is and what kind of habitat they live in, and what kind of behavior they have, and kind of like having this little virtual tour of a slice of the natural world.
It's like when art, nature, and life just collide in one. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
We've had one more question before we move on. We've had a question from Carmen on our Twitch chat, and we'll start with Kirsty on this and then go to David. Each of you, do you have a favorite animal from the game? Because personally, I love the hoopoe.
The hoopoe is a rock star.
That's just because it's it's got that hairdo, it's got the orange and black. What about you, Kirsty?
I feel like it changes every week. Right now, I'm like a big bee eater fan. It's like bee eater migrating south season, and so I'm in Spain at the moment. We've just had them fly over, and it's just that magic of the day that you hear that little really distinctive call above, and you're like, oh, wait, gotta get the bee eater photo. Also, the glossy ibis is just really magical. It's so cute in those marshes. Yeah, there's so many. Every day is different.
Yeah, I don't know which one is my favorite. I think the most beautiful one in the game is the sparrowhawk. I think it's incredible how that is done. I'm really happy that there's a few species of seagull because everyone's like, all the seagulls are the same, and like I like how samey they are, but they're like, oh, you have to look for the colors of the legs and stuff like that, all the different ducks and stuff. Like I really enjoy that in the game you can find those little differences between animals that seem quite similar.
It's like when you first showed me the stock dove in Kennington Park, and I was just like, wait, hang on, there's a pigeon with a fully black eye? That's so weird.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you mentioning that it started off kind of as a bird watching game. You can kind of tell because there is quite a focus on birds. There are lots of other animals there as well, but like a big part of the variety there is birds.
It kind of like mirrors a bit what the experience is in real life when you go around taking pictures of animals. Most of the animals you're going to see are birds because they're easy to see. They make sounds. There might be mammals around, but the mammals are usually nocturnal or are small and hidden. You might see a rat every now and again. So the ratio for vertebrates is kind of accurate. I wish we had time to put invertebrates in. I think it would have made the game like a lot richer, but we just didn't have the time. But I know if we ever make a sequel, there's going to be cicadas and dragonflies and crabs and all sorts.
That is something that
like the cicada buy in the prototype was really fun. Like you just had like this static cicada on a tree, and this kid was like trying to get to sleep. He's like, shut up. Yeah, but it's a totally different game as well when they're static, because I think there's some joy in like chasing a bird and like waiting for it. And there's
well, if anyone's ever tried to catch a grasshopper.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but that is also where it comes from, because from experience of taking pictures of animals, I know that like birds are really fun to take pictures of because they move and you see them clearly and you can predict the movements. There's a lot of gameplay involved even in real life, and I think like insects are really beautiful to photograph, but you don't chase them around. You just like, I'm going to look around in this bush. Oh, there's a beetle here, and you get really close and take a nice picture. But it's, for a game, birds are really engaging because they have those lively behaviors and different calls and
that point about the invertebrates and kind of insects and stuff like that was something that I did notice on playing through, and it's interesting that you bring that up. So Alba 2, please.
Fingers crossed.
When you're down on the beach in the game and stuff, I remember looking for crabs and being
but in the prototype, there used to be a starfish in the prototype, and an anemone and a hermit crab and a cicada, but we've lost all those invertebrates to production.
Our starfish physics.
You got to finish the game somehow. You say starfish physics, Kirsty?
Yeah.
Of course.
What physics does a starfish need?
I mean, they're pretty rigid in real life, but think about it, like they go a bit droopy, and like if you pick it out, like sometimes they'll so we had a little bit of wiggle physics on their arms, but not entirely necessary. We didn't want to encourage poking.
Yeah, exactly. And Cristina has just mentioned from backstage that one of her favorite animals, which is one that I actually missed on my playthrough, is the gecko. I don't think I saw the gecko.
This is one of the ones that if you go to Spain, you see hundreds of them. I feel like that is not represented correctly, the amount of geckos that you see, but you see them mostly at night. So maybe it's okay. That's my reasoning. That's my headcanon.
I think I guess you hid one on a wall somewhere by a sign, so you can go find it having a little chill out time in the town.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be a game set in Spain without geckos.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have lizards, which I'm sad about. But again, I don't know. Maybe in the future we'll make another one of these.
Next game, all crabs and lizards. Nothing but crabs and lizards, as far as the eye can see.
And finally figure out those snakes.
Yeah, the snake was another casualty of production.
I demand a jellyfish in the sequel. jellyfish DLC.
Oh, so you want swimming as well?
We need night mode as well for the bat spotting.
Yeah, we used to have
little
night
bat
mode as
meteors.
well. Yeah, it was nice. So many things.
Yeah, and with any big project like this, there's always going to be stuff that you wish you could have included. And what are some of the other things you wish you could have included?
Yeah, I think nighttime was one of the. I was really sad that we had to lose it. It was so magical when you played, and you had your torch, and the lighting was really cool. And we had plans for like bats and owls, and the owls still made it into the game, but it didn't make a lot of sense to put bats in the middle of the day. But yeah, I think different behaviors across the different times of day for the animals, things like that. It would have been really cool.
Being a nighttime person myself, I'm very, very much relate to how different everything is as soon as you go into that other world of nighttime.
What did you miss,
in the
Kirsty?
game that I was just thinking like about nighttime because I like it so much. There's like one bit in the game right at the end where there's a bit of nighttime, and I think I spend disproportionately more time in that. There's not much gameplay, but I'm just like chilling by the pier at night, listening out for the owls,
getting some paella.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the photo album mechanic we used to have.
Yeah.
So I would like go around taking photos of everything, and it just got out of control the number of photos we had. But yeah, having like that little special book of your photos and being able to keep them, that was nice, and I miss that. But I like it now as well. Like I think it's a lot more immediate. I'm like more immersed in my surroundings rather than sitting on my digital phone, just like sorting through photos. And I'm just
sitting on your phone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I know we've kind of jumped ahead into what what you kind of wish had made it into the game, but I really wanted to circle back and talk about some of those locations, because one of the most beautiful things about this game is the setting and how real and immersive that world is. And I wondered if you guys could maybe talk us through some of the process of building this world.
Yeah, so originally the name of the code name of the game was Nakeda, which is the town that I used to spend my summers when I was a kid, and it's kind of like a town. You can see it now on screen. It's at the beginning. There's a mountain ridge near Valencia, where I'm from, and this is kind of like this town is the gateway to that mountain ridge. So it's kind of like in a little valley, and I used to hate it because I was a kid and I didn't have friends there. But now I find it the most beautiful place in the world. So it started out as taking places from Nakeda and the surrounding places. This picture we're seeing now is actually I took it in Greece, but kind of like has that kind of like Mediterranean vibe.
Yeah, so that kind of the seaside vibe that immediately, as soon as you see that, you know exactly where you are. You know you're on the Mediterranean seaside.
Yeah.
We'd go on these little like Google Street View tours of places that we knew, and just be like, look, this is the vibe of the beach shack.
Yeah, this is a nature reserve near Valencia. We have quite a few of them. So yeah, like all these little like nature reserve architecture or infrastructure is all taken from these places. These are barracas, which are the traditional farmhouses in Valencia, and there's only a few of them left in real life, and there's only one in the game. But I'm quite confident saying that this is the first video game ever to have a barraca in it, and it's it's really beautiful, but also ties into the tradition of Valencian culture and paintings and I don't know, like it's one of those like I think I've done my bit for my hometown now.
You can go back with your head held high.
Exactly. I'd put a barraca in the game.
This is one of my favorite bits. I love the orange orchard, both in real life and also in the game, because it is so evocative.
So Valencia is known from oranges and citric fruits, and around Valencia, all the rural areas next to the city are just like filled with orange trees. And this picture is actually from like my grandma's sisters live in a house in the country with like a residence, and they have like also like those fields, and like whenever I go to visit them, I take pictures of all they live in the most beautiful house with lots of other 90-year-old women there. Yeah, they're very they have high longevity.
So it's oranges. You need vitamin C in
Yeah.
your life.
Right. And for me, one of the things that really struck me, especially when you were sharing these pictures with me, is the little details. Like, for example, like the gas canister and the signs in the nature reserve.
Even this building that you can't see in the picture there in the game is a copy of, it's kind of like a sub power station or something like that, a small power station that is in the same nature reserve that the rest of the nature reserve in the game is based off, which is the Marjal del Moro near Valencia as well. So if you know the area, you can look at, oh, that is that. I think that people really enjoy that, especially because you don't really see that represented in a game usually.
Yeah, and I think that all those little details really build up that authenticity, and it really makes it feel like a real place. And there's something I wanted to ask both of you about is this is a game that is very much set in a real place, and it's a very rural place, and it's a place that many of your players may not have ever even been to, let alone live in. And how do you think that relationship works between kind of urban players and this very rural, very very geographically centered game?
Well, you can find nature anywhere. Like, we live in nature. We just build around it or in it. But so with lockdown, I started taking pictures of bugs in my garden and around the neighborhood. And now I have a little, do I have it here? Like a little camera lens for my phone. And then I just like take pictures. Oh, there you go. I just take pictures of bugs with it. And like, it's amazing. They kind of just like pictures, the amount of animals that you can find anywhere in a city like London, even in the winter, like if you look closely. So to me, and one of the inspirations for the game as well is like a documentary that I saw when I was a kid about urban wildlife. So, like, it's not necessarily a city, it's very rural, but to me, this is a vindication of like urban wildlife. What do you think, Kirsty?
I think the same like principles of exploring can apply to wildlife spotting in the city, and we have these green spaces in cities, and like the game was dreamt up as me and David went on park walks around Kennington, just like seeing the go chasing crickets through the dried out grass in the summer, and just like seeing the joy in that. And as the team grew, like we would make a point to like go on team walks in the town, like whether it was local nature reserves or just like around the park, and pointing out all these nature, all these birds and different animals that we'd see. And I think just like showing that it was possible to be a nature explorer in a town.
Yeah, and highlighting that kind of human nature interface, and the fact that interaction can happen anywhere, especially where we least expect it, is something that we at the museum, we're super keen to communicate with our audiences. We've got things like the Urban Nature Project and a lot of our kind of outreach and school and community work that really kind of feeds into a lot of that. And in fact, it'd be really great to have a little look at the relationship between us two games and the museum in a sec, but just going to come to another question from Carmen, going back to some of the locations that we've been looking at in the game and in real life. Are there any specific locations in the game that you particularly love? So Carmen is a big fan of the marshes, which is, you know, obviously where you'll see a lot of the kind of water birds, and there's a lot of the story happens there because that's that nature reserve. But what about you guys? Kirsty?
I love
Oh,
the rice
do you want some
fields.
thinking time?
I'm thinking about like the rice fields are really magical because you see like the flamingos hanging out there and you get lovely reflections, and that's like my favorite evening sunset spot in the game. And I like the sun setting and you're like, okay, I need to wind down for the day, but I'm gonna just like do one last trip to the rice fields and see what's down there and try and get a nice photo of the sun centered. So yeah, I think that one's special. But even like at the end of the game, just like sitting in the town, hearing the party happening off to the distance, and I just love sitting at the end of the pier. These little seats were added like last minute in the production of the game, and I think it's such a nice little moment of chill out. Just being able to sit there and take in the environment, hear the ambience, and yeah, have a little moment of meditation.
I think that's something that's so rare in games, is just being able to just take a moment and just chill.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really appreciated, especially, you know, sunset and flamingos.
And usually when games are chill, a lot of times it's because there isn't much to do in the game. So we've tried to make a game in which you can do lots of things, but also you can chill out if you want. But yeah, the rice fields I also really love. It was the last location to be added to the island, and it took a bit of fighting from my part to get it in, because like, oh, no one cares about this. Like, it's fine. We have an island already. And I'm like, but it's so integral to the culture of Valencia and that region in Spain in general. Like, rice dishes are really important. And the rice fields is just like a landscape that you don't see in games that much. And in real life, it has this kind of like magical feeling of like, it's just the horizon and you. I think my favorite place in the game might be like, I love how the church looks in that outcrop, and as like, I think it's the most photogenic site in the game. But yeah, I can't really pick a favorite. This is like a bit of me in game form.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. And so here we are at the rice fields.
On sunset.
At sunset, which is Kirsty's favorite time. And Cristina has also posted from backstage saying, so Cristina, for our audience, Cristina is also Spanish. And the rice fields next to her hometown in Spain are one of her favorite places in the world. So I think this is something that you all share in common.
It's just a magical place that you don't see represented in films or in games, or like, you have to be really specific, and making a game with it like a mainstream appeal like this, with landscapes like this, to me is, I don't know, a personal achievement.
And so circling back to kind of how our involvement came in. So as far as I know, this is the first time that the Natural History Museum has ever, you know, had any kind of collaboration with a video game studio. What made you think to contact us?
Well, you're an authority, and we're making a game about nature. But we really wanted to make sure that we weren't misrepresenting stuff and you know, barking at the wrong tree. And I don't know, like, we would have liked to do it maybe a bit earlier on, so maybe more feedback could have been integrated. But I think, like, overall, having this, you know, having someone with the knowledge, like, you know, the science to back us up and say, like, yeah, this is, you know, it's a game, it's a fantasy, it's not 100% real, but on principle, the things that you're doing are the right things, for us was like really important. And also, you know, when you talked about, like, back in the day, we talked about insects as well. And like, yeah, we also want that. But like finding that, you know, it might have been like, you're all wrong. And so yeah, it was like a bit of due diligence. And Natural History Museum is, I mean, my son obviously loves it because he is 6, but like I love it as well, and is one of those things that, like, I don't know, it's like a dream. It's a dream project if also let you collaborate with the Natural History Museum. I don't know, like, it's such a big honor.
Well, from me and Christina's end, it was also kind of a similar dream, because we are working at Natural History Museum, which is really fun and awesome and cool, and we get to talk about science and nature all the time. But then for this project, we got to collaborate with a video game studio on a lovely, amazing product, and it's come out really nicely. Like, here we go. Here's your favorite place, the church.
Yeah.
And
it's so peaceful up there. I don't know, it's nice. I like it.
Yeah, and that alignment between between the ethos of the game and actually the kind of the practicalities of it, that doesn't just extend to consulting with us on aspects of the game, but also you have a kind of tree planting initiative as well connected to the game, don't you?
Yeah, we didn't want to just do a bit of virtue signaling and say, like, oh, look, this is what you should do. Like, we want to put our actions as well as our words in the same direction. So we've taken a bunch of initiatives to help environment in various ways, and one of them is that we have a pledge of planting 1 tree for every copy of the game sold or downloaded, with the aim to reach 1 million trees. And
how are you doing on that target?
So I think last time I checked, I don't know if it's just I think it's just about 850,000.
863,540.
There you go.
Nice.
So
I thought I could see searching face on Kirsty.
We're almost there. The goal is to plant 1 million trees, and if we go over the 1 million trees, I don't know what we'll do, but I'm sure we'll do something else. Yeah, we're doing it through.
We'll release a million crabs.
Exactly. For every copy of the game, we release a crab. We're going to destroy this habitat now. But yeah, we're collaborating with Ecology, who does sustainable plantations and reforestation projects around the world. And we have with them some plantations in Madagascar, I think it's Mozambique, and Nicaragua, I think it is. There's a bunch of plantations that we're collaborating with them, and yeah, I don't know, again, really happy to, and feel super lucky to have been able to work on a project that has this physical, tangible impact in the real world. It's not just making a game about telling people to care about nature. It's actually us spending the part of the money that we make with the game in planting trees and helping nature ourselves.
Yeah, and you've won a couple of awards connected to that: the Apple Design Social Impact Award and the Games for Change Award. So it's great to see that not just that that this game is having a positive impact, but it's being recognized by the wider industry, and hopefully maybe we'll see more of this in the future.
I think that's like one of the I feel like this game is part of a tradition of games around nature and nature conservation. Like, you can think of Sonic the Hedgehog as someone fighting for nature against industrialization, but also games awards are catching up with that, and there's lots of recognition now for social impact and environmental initiatives and being more than games, like what's beyond the game. And I'm also really proud to be part of that trend with the game, and hopefully, this kind of like cements this idea that these are games, but it's more than just like playing and having a bit of fun.
Yeah, I think the phrase "more than just a game" is something that's being used more and more about video games. So we're getting towards the final leg of our conversation. So I wanna delve into kind of your both of your personal gaming history and your relationship with gaming in a little bit. But also, if any of you at home have any last-minute questions or comments, do get them in, because we're about 5 minutes from the end, and we want to hear from you if you've got anything to share. So, Kirsty, would you mind telling us a little bit about your relationship with gaming? Were there any games that have inspired you to work in games, or in the process of making Alba? Or
Ooh, that's a tricky one. So I come from games from a musical background, so I loved musical toys like aquaplankton and things that kind of encourage music making, but in a games world. And often they're really short and really like neatly designed. So they might only last you a minute, or you can get carried away and play for half an hour. But I really love those like satisfying short interactions that you get, and you especially see that on mobile games. So I think trying to get as many of those charming little interactions in as possible, I think that's where I came from into Alba.
what about you, David?
Well, I play all sorts of games, and I really love open world games. And to me, that was one of the main goals. That again, having young children and knowing how cool it is to explore a virtual space, but it's kind of like not age appropriate to play Assassin's Creed with a 3-year-old. But there is magic in there. There is discovery and adventure. So that was for me one of the main motivators to make, an open world game that everyone can play at any age, and there's low barriers for accessibility and complexity, and you can just have a fun time in the same way that you would if you're a real gamer, and you play 140 hours of assassinating people in the Middle Ages, which I also enjoy.
He's got to do that before Atlas comes along and sees all the nice stuff. Clear out the area.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
But yeah, those games I really enjoy. But I play all sorts. I'm playing good Sudoku lately quite a bit. So I think any good game is good.
You heard it here first, folks. I think you can really, really see that both of those things that you've just mentioned, the kind of the open world vibe, and also the ability to kind of, when I was playing it, I would sink hours into Alba. I wouldn't just kind of dip in, but it is the type of game that you could dip in for a few minutes, have a bit of a chill on this lovely island, and then, okay, cool, I've got to go and do something else and turn it off. So it does have those different layers of interaction there. And I think that's all we've got time for in our conversation. Thank you so much. This has been really, really lovely. For those of you at home, I can't recommend this game enough. It is lovely and chill and fun and beautiful and sweet and nice. And other good words. So thank you so much, David and Kirsty. Can't wait for the sequel full of crabs and jellyfish.
I can't make any promises. Thanks for having us. It's been really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Anytime. And thank you at home for watching as well. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So next month, we're going to be looking at COP26. And so Christina's going to be in the driving seat, and she's going to be hearing from some of our younger members of our society. She's going to be talking to children and seeing what they feel about environmental issues and how we're handling it. So maybe they're going to put us on blast. Maybe they'll throw softballs. We'll see what happens. But until then, that was David Fernandez Huerta and Kirsty Keach. I've been Khalil Thurlaway, and this has been Lates Online from the Natural History Museum. Thank you and good night.